5 students from a mountaineering club set out for a snowy mountain. The weather was clear when they arrived, but around lunchtime, snow started to fall, and by evening, it had turned into a blizzard, forcing the students to find shelter. However, on the way, one of the students got hit by a falling rock and died, leaving his friends to carry his body with them. The 4 remaining students then found a small mountain cabin. Thinking themselves saved, they went inside and found it empty, and the heater broken. They put their dead friend on the floor and stopped to think. If they stayed just like this, they would likely die too, so they had to figure out a way to survive the blizzard without any heating. And so, they came up with a game. The 4 of them would each sit in a corner of the room. The first person would then walk to the second, hand tracing the wall, and then touch the second person on the shoulder. The first person would then sit where the second person was, while the second person got up, followed the wall, and touched the third person on the shoulder in the same manner. The third person would then do the same to the fourth, and then the fourth would do the same to the first, making a complete lap of the cabin. The idea behind the game was to keep each of them awake, waiting for their turn, and give them a sense of purpose in waiting so they could then do the same. And by playing this game through the night, the students were able to survive and then safely descend the mountain without freezing to death. It wasn't until later, however, that one of the students realized something horrifying. There was simply no way to play this game with only 4 people. The game started with the first person moving to the second, but when it was time for the 4th person to touch the first, they would have to turn 2 corners to reach them. So then, who was the person whose shoulder they touched? It couldn't have been anyone but their dead friend, who it seemed had returned to help them from beyond the grave. Hello and welcome to Toshiden, exploring Japanese urban legends. I'm your host, Tara A. Devlin, and on this show we'll be looking at different urban legends from Japan, how they came about, and, when possible, the truth behind them. If you want even more urban legends, make sure you pick up Toshiden Volume 4 for even more terrifying tales that you can find only in the books. And if you'd like early access to both this show and Kawabana, or you'd just like to support us, you can find our Patreon at patreon.com/Tara A. Devlin. Thanks, guys. There have been numerous arguments made about when this urban legend first came into being, but many claim it was first shared, as the above story about 4 mountain climbers, on Ijuin Hikaru's radio show in the 1990s. That story was then shared online, and the rest is history. Or so they say. But how long has this story actually been around? And how and why is it played? Although the game goes by numerous names, such as the Corner Game in English and the Four Corners Game in Chinese, in Japanese it's simply referred to as Square. The rules for playing it are also simple. 1. You need a room with 4 corners, 4 people, and no lights. 2. Each person stands in a corner, and the first person walks towards the second, tracing the wall with their hand so they don't get lost. 3. Upon reaching the second person, the first must tap them on the shoulder. This is the signal for the second person to start moving. 4. The second person does the same, following the wall until they reach the third person, and then tap them on the shoulder. 5. The third person does the same for the fourth, and then the square is completed when the fourth person does the same to the first. The trick, however, lies in the fact that this is actually impossible. It's perhaps easiest to visualize if you look at the layout of the room from step 3. 4 corners, 4 people. But the game doesn't really start until the first person taps the second person on the shoulder, meaning 2 people are in 1 corner, while person 3 and person 4 are in 2 more corners. Person 1's corner, therefore, is empty. This means that by the time person 4 starts moving, they're going to have to turn a corner and keep going the length of 2 walls to reach person 1. But they don't. They're able to walk the length of 1 wall before tapping someone's shoulder. If person 1 is currently in corner 2, who is in corner 1? That's why this game is thought of as a summoning game, similar to Kokkuri-san and other such necromancy games. The mystery person standing in that corner can only be a ghost. Although many claim the most popular version of the Square story, as it's known today, came from a radio show in the 1990s, the idea of 4 people traversing a square only to discover that there's someone, or something else, there with them, has been around for much, much longer. There are claims that Square actually spun off from a game played in the Yonezawa region of Yamagata Prefecture, in Japan's northeast. This game, known as Sumi no Ba-sama, Old Woman in the Corner, can be seen in the Edo period scary story collection Doji Hyaku Monogatari, 100 Scary Tales of Children. Here, it was played more as a test of courage than a summoning ritual, however. In Sumi no Ba-sama, 4 people gather in a dark room, just like in Square, and each of them sits in a corner. They then crawl towards the center of the room and touch each other's heads to count, each time saying, "Old woman from the first corner. Old woman from the second corner." With only 4 people playing this game, you would expect to count only 4 heads. However, it always results in 5. Meaning an extra person, or perhaps spirit, has been summoned. Are you brave enough to take part and count all 4, or perhaps 5, heads? For a period of time, rumours spread that Square was actually based on an old Western legend instead. Long ago, a British man by the name of Lord Rothstein found himself in a terrible amount of debt. While trying to figure out a way to make money to pay this debt off, he hit upon an idea. He would host an event in his castle to bring everyone there. But not just any event. Oh no. This event would summon a demon. Being a deeply religious land at the time, the idea of summoning a demon was, of course, a big no-no. But Lord Rothstein knew this ritual wouldn't actually summon a demon. After all, they didn't exist. No, his plan all along was to fake it, and the success of this ritual would bring people from all over to his castle, helping him make the money he needed to pay off his debt. The ritual itself was simple, and he chose the creepiest part of his castle to carry it out in: the corridor. He handpicked 5 people to take part, placing 2 people in corner A, and then 1 each in corners B, C, and D. The lights in the corridor were turned off, everyone blindfolded, and one of the 2 people in corner A then walked towards corner B. Once they got there, they tapped the person on the shoulder, who then started walking towards corner C. Unlike Square, because there were 5 people from the start, this ritual could carry on infinitely. But as this was happening, 1 person would then be removed, leaving only 4 people taking part. Normally, this would mean the game would end, as 1 person would find themselves at an empty corner with no shoulder to tap. However, if somehow the game continued, that meant that a demon had arrived to take the missing person's place. The ritual was a success. Lord Rothstein's secret plan was to remove one person, as per the ritual's rules, but then have the person who reached the empty corner continue to the next one, tap the person on the shoulder, and then go back to their original corner. In this manner, they could keep the square going indefinitely with only 4 people, because one of them was secretly turning a corner and then going back one corner each time. And reportedly, his experiment was a great success, and he and his castle gained enough fame to pay off his debts. And that's how the ritual itself came to be known as Rothstein's Corridor. This old legend sounds surprisingly similar to Square, so it's no surprise that, for a while, people thought this might be where it originated from. But in reality, the story of Lord Rothstein and the dark corridor in his castle, where he summoned a demon, was just that. It was actually a story made up by the creator of an adult game, Spiral Corridor, that came out in January 2000, meaning it was likely influenced by Square and not the other way around. In 1926, novelist Miyazawa Kenji published a short story called The Story of the Zashiki Warashi. In this story, 10 children are holding hands and spinning in a circle, playing a game. But at some point, they notice there are now 11 of them. But oddly, nobody is sure who the extra person is, as everyone knows everyone, and nobody seems unfamiliar or out of place. And that is what a Zashiki Warashi is, the story tells us. This story was inspired by even older tales of Zashiki Warashi, but the similarities to Square are clear. A group of people playing a game in a circle, and at some point, suddenly, there is one more. Another old story from the Iwate area, told in the 1975 anime Manga Nihon Mukashi Banashi, cartoon Japanese folk tales, features a couple who move into an old house, and in each of the 4 corners of the tatami room, a Zashiki Warashi appears. Zashiki Warashi have long been tied to not just children's games, but small rooms in houses, and in some cases, the corners of said rooms. It's not difficult to see why some people might connect Square, as we know it today, to these older legends. At the end of the day, it's unknown exactly how the modern version of Square came about, but it was likely influenced by numerous older stories and folktales, passed down over the years, until it morphed into the more modern version that is still shared today. And that brings us to the end of this week's episode. You can help support us and get early access to both this show and Kowabana over on our Patreon at patreon.com/TaraADevlin. And if you still want even more urban legends, Toshiden Volume 4 is available right now, so don't miss out. Thanks guys, and I'll see you again next time for even more Toshiden, exploring Japanese urban legends.